that is a rarer extrapulmonary tuberculosis diagnosis and management. And when Sanjeev sir called me for this topic, he specifically told me that we are going to cover the index TB cases guidelines extrapulmonary tuberculosis. So I should cover the things which are not covered in that. But unfortunately, if there is an overlap, please forgive me for that. So the objective of my talk for today is I will discuss, I'll give some introduction about rare forms of extrapulmonary tuberculosis, and we'll have a brief discussion on diagnosis and management of that. Then there will be 4 cases which I will go through it. Then I will summarize and will give a take-home message. So the rare forms of extrapulmonary tuberculosis which I'm going to talk about will be some cases which is other than the lymph node and pleura. On the right side of my slide, you can see the graph. This was a publication from Wellinger and et al. which was published somewhere in 2018. And what he showed was the most common sites were lymph node and pleura. And I'm sure you all are aware since morning you are seeing this. So if you saw on the fag end of those slides, you can see breast and pericardial and skin and so on. So those are the cases which we will discuss in the few slides, in the next few slides. And as we are aware, tuberculosis is a granulomatous infectious disease. It can involve all tissues and organs of the body. And in TB endemic countries such as in India, extrapulmonary tuberculosis should be considered in differential diagnosis of every infection which you encounter other than lungs too. Like lungs, yes, but other than lungs too. So the ratio of EPTB or PTB changes according to geographical, social, ethnic, and economical parameters. Now, etiopathogenesis, it is in general extrapulmonary tuberculosis, including rare pulmonary tuberculosis. So as we are aware that EPTB is the result of lymphohematogenous dissemination of the primary TB infection and then subsequent latency of those disseminated TB bacilli are responsible when that happens. So the latency period in different organs is different, and it is up to 6 months to 50 years. So reactivation occurs due to reduced body resistance or increased susceptibility of the host. Now that can occur at any stage of life. The only question which we have not able to answer till now is why TB bacteria shows reactivation in the lungs of some cases and why it shows reactivation in other organs in some cases. That's not yet clear. So the risk factors for reactivation in the EPTB sites are female gender or history of contact with tuberculosis, smoking, and stage renal disease. An important clue for the diagnosis will be history of previous contact with tuberculosis. A study by Lin Jin et al., which was published in International Journal of Tuberculosis and Lung Disease in the year of 2009, what they found out was 76.6% of EPTB had history of contact in last 5 years with tuberculosis case. So the cases and context of pulmonary tuberculosis should be carefully examined for the possible presence of EPTB. That way you will catch it earlier. Now coming to the comorbidities which can cause increased development of EPTB are long-term use of corticosteroids, diabetes, immunosuppression, COPD patients, alcoholism, CKD, CLD, or malignancy. These are all some of the risk factors which you will come across when you find EPTB or rare form of EPTB. However, we had seen patient coming without any risk factors still developing EPTB. Now, clinical and lab diagnosis, since morning we are seeing the diagnosis of EPTB is definitely more difficult than the diagnosis of PTB, and the clinical suspicion is an important step in diagnosis. So proper history and proper clinical examination is must to establish the diagnosis as well as to decide which is the best diagnostic method. Histopathology and culture of the biopsy material. Culture is in inverted comma because most of the times we are so much obsessed with the histopathology that we forget to send cultures. So histopathology and culture of biopsy material is an important step for the diagnosis of EPTB. So why there is a delay in the diagnosis of rare EPTB? Sometimes we see that the shortest time, as per the study by De Malaria et al., which was again published in the IUGDLD, they found that the shortest time period for diagnosis was taken in pleural tuberculosis, while that was longest in case of skeletal tuberculosis. Time between onset of symptoms and establishment of diagnosis of EPTB is reported in that particular study was around 5 to 6.5 months. So delay in diagnosis may result in serious morbidity and mortality. So you have to have high index of suspicion prior to diagnosing. So as I told that in endemic countries, TB endemic countries, just consider all infection as EPTB. Treatment is very similar to pulmonary tuberculosis. Just one point that most of the rarer forms of extrapulmonary tuberculosis does not require treatment more than 9 months. Now moving on to my cases. The first case is Mr. RP. He was 68 years old gentleman who was a farmer hailing from Punalur. He presented to us with left-sided arcalgia and left-sided testicular swelling since 2 weeks. He also had dyspnea, anorexia. His past history was significant. He was diabetic, he had hypertension, and he had right-sided hemiparesis 10 years before. He was having paroxysmal AF2. He was admitted for further investigation. As you can see in the X-ray, there was a fissural thickening with some prominent bronchovascular marking, but nothing to suggest pulmonary tuberculosis. He was anemic with HB of 8.9 with 25.2 PCV. Other than that, his echo and other parameters were okay, acceptable. Ultrasound of abdomen as well as pelvis was done, which showed grade 1 prostatomegaly. It also showed well-defined rounded lesion, left-sided hydrocele and left varicocele. The plan was to do left orchidectomy. He underwent left orchidectomy and the perioperative as well as postoperative period were uneventful. Now coming to the histopathology, as you are seeing in this slide, there is a dense inflammatory infiltrate of epithelioid histiocytes as well as giant cells with forming macrophages, which is forming granulomas. And there are numerous, those blue cells which you are seeing roaming around surrounding this particular granuloma are neutrophils. So the final diagnosis was necrotizing granulomatous inflammation. Unfortunately, in this patient, the culture for AFB as well as gene expert was not sent. So we have to go ahead with MTB PCR, which was found to be negative, and the stain on this slide for AFB and GMS were negative. However, with this much of granuloma and the clinical findings suggestive of tuberculosis, patient was clinically as well as histopathologically diagnosed as TB orchiditis and testicular abscess. He was started on category 1 and he improved with that. Moving on to the next case, he's a 44 years old gentleman who is working as in a catering business from Palakkad. He presented to us somewhere in 2018 and he is a non-smoker, hypertension as well as asthma. He has significant past history. He underwent left cortical mastodectomy with type 1 tympanoplasty and right tympanostomy in December 2015. 2 years later, he has to undergo FAS as well as tympanostomy. Almost 3 months after that particular surgery, he presented to us in April 2018. He had bilateral ear discharge. Discharge was moderate in amount and it was foul smelling. However, there was no blood stain. He had complaint of reduced hearing on both the ears. He also gave history of mucopurulent postnasal discharge. There were no other nasal or ear complaint. As you can see here also that the X-ray chest was apparently normal. We found that there were eosinophilia in his CBC. Other than that, no significant blood investigations, like contributory blood investigations. On local examination, which was done by ENT surgeon, there was a left ear which showed multiple perforations seen in tympanic membrane with pouting granulation tissue. Even right side ear was also few granulation tissue with small perforation. Tuning fork test was showing bilateral ABC reduced, as well as audiogram also showed bilateral mixed hearing loss. Nose examination was showing mucopurulent discharge. You can see the AP X-ray of sinus in which both the maxillary sinus are filled with the fluids. The lateral cervical lateral X-ray showed significant haziness in the mastoid area. We went ahead with the CT scan of temporal bone. If you can see here, this is a medial ear cavity which was filled with the soft tissue, as well as there is an erosion of the bones on both the sides. So he underwent tympanoplasty and mastectomy under general anesthesia on the left side. The histopathological findings were showing inflammatory infiltrates. Again, those pink-looking cells are eosinophils. There are some lymphocytes and epithelial histiocytes as well as foreign body giant cells. Ill-formed granulomas were seen. However, the pathologist's final comment was it was a chronic inflammatory lesion. They didn't commit that it is tuberculosis. And as you can see, the history is going on since 2015, 17, 18. So, anyway, we thought maybe it is tuberculosis, but fortunately the pus aspirate from the right ear came AB positive. He was started on anti-tuberculous drug. The final diagnosis was tuberculosis chronic otitis media. He finished ATT, but he had only partial recovery. He required hearing aids. The third case was 47 years old gentleman who is a junior superintendent in government service. He presented to us with a swelling over the left thigh. The history started 2 months before when he had insidious onset of gradually progressive swelling on the left thigh. It was associated with severe dragging pain as well as he was limping because of pain when he was walking. There was a history of low-grade fever for last 2 months. Later on, the pus started coming out from the swelling and he underwent IND nearby hospital. However, he developed sinus, which was persistent, so he came to us for further management. His vitals were stable, general examination was okay, except there were 2 inguinal lymph nodes which were 1 by 1 centimeter firm and non-tender. The local examination of the thigh was 1 by 1 centimeter solitary oval ulcer on the lateral aspect of the thigh associated with purulent discharge oozing from that particular area, which was around 15 centimeter from greater trochanter. His investigations, as you can see here, X-ray was fine and I could not see anything other than ESR which was elevated. Because he developed thigh abscess, we thought we should send his immunoglobulin profile also, which was found to be normal. He was not a diabetic with HbA1c of 5.1. He didn't have any risk factors. But in ultrasound abdomen, what we found was surprising that there was a focal hypoechoic area in the spleen. They suggested you should do a CT scan for further specifications. And CCT abdomen was showing well-defined non-enhancing hyperdense lesion in the spleen, which was around 3 by 3 by 2.8 centimeter in size. They suspected that it can be granulomatous lesions. The MRI of the thigh, which was done outside, so we could not repeat it here, and it also showed abscess and posterolateral aspect of the left upper thigh was seen. So there were 2 things which we did. One was inguinal lymph node FNAC. As you can see here, it was a ill-formed granuloma with multiple lymphocytes and epithelial histiocytes. It was a granulomatous inflammation, and the pus was obviously oozing out, and that was the best source of investigation. So we sent it for examination, which came positive for tuberculosis. Expert also found to be positive. However, rifampicin resistance was not detected. We made a diagnosis of tuberculous lesions in the spleen. So this was, I would suggest it was a disseminated extrapulmonary tuberculosis with a thigh abscess with a splenic tuberculosis. However, I didn't do biopsy for spleen and proved it. A patient was initiated on TB medicines. He finished. I continued it for 9 months and his weight from 55 kg reached 62.5 kg. At the time of stopping ATT, we did repeat MRI, which you can see here was a small sinus rather than the big sinus which was present at the start of the treatment. Now coming to the last case of my presentation, this was 82 years old lady who is a diabetes and who has uncontrolled diabetes, presented with lesions over axilla, inframammary region and groin for last 1 year. She thought it was fungal infection and she self-treated herself with luliconazole without much relief. She presented to our dermatology department and she was found to have erythematous plaques on the past 1 year. So what dermatologists found was that they suspected it was a dermatophytes infection in the regions, but there was a single well-defined flat top, raised thick scaly plaque with prominent borders on the back, which they suspected can be Bowen's or basal cell carcinoma or lupus vulgaris, and skin biopsy was planned. Her investigations were as following. She had thrombocytosis, HbA1c was 8, as well as X-ray was okay. And the skin biopsy which was taken, this is a dermis layer of the skin which showed multiple nodules of small and large granulomas. There are some areas where you can see Schwann bodies as well as you can see some necrosis, which is fibrinoid necrosis. And the pathologist did not comment whether it is TB or sarcoid, but we were fortunate to get expert MTB rifampicin positive, gene expert was positive, as well as the culture also grew the MTB. The final diagnosis was cutaneous TB or lupus vulgaris. She has been started on TB medicines, and she is on that for last 3 months, and her plaque size, lesions, everything has been reduced. So some other rare sites of extrapulmonary tuberculosis which we had come across in Amrita are peritoneum, spleen, knee, thyroid, chest wall, adrenal, synovial fluid, ovary, testis, larynx, liver, skin, endometrium, parotid, and breast. I'm yet to see a TB of lips, tongue, and epiglottis. So I'm sorry for So summarizing, the extrapulmonary tuberculosis occurs in different organs and it has got different clinical courses. Definitely, it is difficult to diagnose, which can result in delay in treatment and delay in therapeutic. There are many therapeutic problems which requires IND and many things. It might require invasive procedures. That is also very difficult in some patients. Delay in treatment increases the cost as well as increase in morbidity and mortality. My take-home message for you people will be a rare extrapulmonary tuberculosis, definitely more difficult to diagnose than pulmonary tuberculosis, but you can diagnose it if you suspect. Consider a diagnosis of TB in every differential diagnosis of infection. Always remember to send your precious samples. I am telling precious because you can't go that again and take those samples again. So always send your precious samples for from extrapulmonary sites for microbiology, including AB smear, BACTEC, and Gene Expert. For making it easy, in Amrita we have created an MTB panel. That's all. We have to generate one order and all things will be done. Treatment is quite similar to pulmonary tuberculosis, but I believe that most of the rare forms does not require more than 9 months. And this presentation would not have been possible without help of Dr. Akhilesh and Dr. Divya from my department, as well as Dr. Archana and Dr. Meera from the Department of Pathology. I thank you all for your patient listening.